Hey guys, today we're going to do one of my favorite videos, and that is a vet bring-back story of a P-38 brought back September 2nd, 1944. So today's bring-back story is about Captain Paul Hanlon, also MD. So he's Dr. Paul Hanlon, but also Captain Paul Hanlon, about this P-38 that he brought home from the war. Now, typically when we have vet bring-back stories, it includes a capture paper, and the capture paper does increase the value of these collectibles. In this case, I think we have something a little better because what we have is a story to go with it. Often with the capture paper, we don't get the story. But this gun, along with some other items I'm going to show you, I have a collection of things that were brought back by Captain Hanlon and brought to legacy by his son. And his son came here, brought all of this, and I asked him to type up this story. So let me share the story with you, a little bit about his service to our country in World War II. Can you believe it? I just got brand new gloves and this thing excreted on me. Oh my gosh. Oh well, we're going to have to get through the video with that stain on my finger. But enough about me. Let's talk about Captain Hanlon and his service. This P-38 pistol was a trophy of war brought back by my father from World War II. Fresh out of medical school, Dr. Hanlon was assigned to the 30th Infantry Division as a surgeon. He landed on Omaha Beach on June 11, 1944. So that's D-Day plus 4 days. And that would make sense because the medical teams often would come in a little bit after the actual invasion. They did have corpsmen on the beaches, however. A month later, the soldiers of the 30th Infantry Division found themselves in Saint-Lô, France, heading the breakout. His division was said to have seen some of the most intense fighting of the war over almost 300 days of combat. There's a vast amount of information about these incredible men that can be found on the internet. During that time, my father received a Purple Heart, a Bronze Star, and a Silver Star for valor. The write-up for these medals said that he was given them for having saved many lives on the battlefield, treating wounded soldiers with no regard for his own life. Now, I'm going to jump to some articles from that time to kind of fill in some of the information. This first article about Dr. Paul Hanlon, this was when he received his Purple Heart, having been wounded on July 17th. Now, remember, he landed in Normandy in June 11th, and he was wounded by July 17th. And that was probably during the breakout, as they mentioned. And this is from the Scranton paper. Mrs. Hanlon said last night that she believes her son may have resumed his duties on the war front after recovering at a base hospital. She has not been officially notified from the War Department of her son's wounds. This is an incredible statement in the newspaper. It says, Captain Hanlon is one of 6 sons serving as doctors in the current war. And then the article goes through to name each one of them. One of them was in the Burma theater. The other was working on tropical diseases at Walter Reed Hospital. Another one they mentioned was in the Army. And then also one at Jefferson Medical School. A 7th son, so 7 sons.
Doctor. Doctor.
Doctor.
Doctor.
Doctor.
Doctor.
Doctor.
Doctor.
Doctor.
Doctor.
Doctor.
Doctor.
Doctor.
Doctor.
And doctor.
Is also a doctor, and he's a member of the St. Luke's Hospital staff in Bethlehem, PA. So if you know that area, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, and Bethlehem are all up there just above Allentown. And if you are a collector, I often go to the Allentown Gun Show. Very worthwhile show, so check it out. Just one other note that's worth mentioning. Their father was also a doctor, Dr. Edward Hanlon, died some time ago. Captain Paul Hanlon entered service in May of 1942, where he was stationed at Camp Shelby in Mississippi and also in Camp Atterbury in Indiana. He went overseas to England in February of 1944. I have a second magazine article I wanted to show you, but first, this is the only picture I have of Captain Hanlon, and he is the guy in the front who are leading a group of men. From the scrubby pines in the background, my best guess is this is not the beaches of France. nor any place in Germany, but rather this is Mississippi. If you've been to Mississippi, the soil and the plants around it, I'm sure some of you will comment, but this looks like Camp Shelby in Mississippi. Now here's the second article, again from the newspaper in Scranton. This article talks about events from August 10th of 1944. So again, remember he went into service in 42, landed in Normandy on June 11th, wounded in July, I believe that was 17th, and now getting a Silver Star, being awarded a Silver Star on August 10th of 1944. Captain Paul Hanlon of this city, Scranton, has been awarded the Silver Star for distinguished service during the Battle of Mortain, France. According to the word of Mrs. Hanlon, and then gives her address in Scranton, Captain Hanlon was assigned to the 30th Infantry Division of the 1st Army and has been in active service in the European theater since the invasion last June. He previously had received the Purple Heart for wounds sustained during the action near Saint-Lô, France. The presentation was made in October in Germany and read in part. Captain Paul Hanlon of the Medical Corps, United States Army, is awarded the Silver Star for gallantry in action on the 10th of August 1944 in France. Captain Hanlon was serving as a surgeon in the infantry battalion, engaged in a vigorous firefight with the enemy. During the critical phase of the action, when enemy artillery fire was particularly heavy in the sector, and when hostile small arms fire was increasingly intense, many casualties were inflicted on our ranks. With utter disregard for his own personal risk, Captain Hanlon maintained his aid station within full view of the enemy and personally moved forward under fire to render aid to many wounded soldiers. The courage and devotion to duty and unselfish determination to fulfill his mission resulted not only in the saving of many lives, but also served as an inspiration to the men of his battalion. So, especially to Paul Hanlon and his family, thank you for your service to our country. In the beginning, I showed you this P-38, and we did a close-up because September 2nd, remember, he was wounded in July. He received a Silver Star for bravery in August, and he picked this up in September, actually September 2nd of 1944. I'll talk a little bit about the gun, but my best guess would be, certainly he could have, one of the soldiers, since he was in the medical corps, he probably was not out capturing prisoners, but I would imagine that not only did he operate and save the lives of U.S. soldiers, but I'm sure he also had interaction with wounded German soldiers. And so it is possible that he got this from a German soldier that he helped. It also is possible he got it any number of ways. But for some reason, he did mark the date, and he carried this with him through the rest of the war, this along with the holster that came with it. Let's take a closer look at the gun. This is a P-38, obviously, AC-43. This smoochie is going to bother me, so let's reverse my glove. There you go. I only had one glove for a little bit, so I looked like Michael Jackson a little bit. But AC-43, most of you know AC is the factory code for Walther. They started making P-38s in late 38, early 39, but most of them were made from 1940 to about 1945, actually April of 1945. So this one is from 43. You see the 4-digit serial number with no suffix. And then it does have the Waffen stamp here, which is an Eagle 359. You can see the safety. It still has a lot of grease, which caused my schmutzy, but there's grease throughout. I like that. A well-kept weapon. Little bit of plum finish here, and you will see that, especially in 43s and 44s, it has like a plum color, and that has to do with the way the metal was treated. So it's not real pronounced, but if you see that in the video, it's not your imagination. That is quite common. In fact, here's a picture of one with a plum frame. These come in 9mm, of course, and then you see the test proofs here where it was test fired and approved for the German Army. And as already mentioned, this is what was inscribed on the grip. It comes with the P.38 magazine, and this is a correct magazine, P.38V, and usually there is a Waffen stamp on the back, and for some reason I don't see it there. Could be that it was skipped or it was picked up later in the war. It's most likely that it was skipped because they didn't always. I've seen them where there's missing stamps or only 2 stamps. Actually, you see them with 4 stamps and an asterisk. But I digress. There's a lot of different ways that they mark these guns and tell a little bit about the history of the gun. It is all matching. I won't take it apart. I've done that in other videos. But the 43. P.38 comes with a .42 holster. This is considered a hard shell holster as opposed to soft shell. Here's a picture of a soft shell P.38 holster. And these are marked P.38. It also has a Waffen stamp here, meaning approved for the military. That's the maker code and 1942. The leather's in pretty good condition, but you can see it held up P.38 for quite a long time. This is the lift strap, so that when the gun is placed into the holster, you can lift it, pulling the strap. But I find that these break fairly easily, so I usually just do that. Now I want to continue reading the note from his son, but really what's incredible about this assembly, and when they walked in the door, husband and wife came in the door, I got really excited because I could see the rest of it. These all came together, all came back as souvenirs from Dr. Hanlon. We'll take a look at each one of them individually, but let me continue reading the letter. After the war, my father returned to England and married a British girl that he met in London. Way to go, Brits! Love you guys, but love the girls even more. They then moved to the United States and settled in the Wilkes-Barre, which again, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, Bethlehem, PA. They settled in that area of the country. He told me that he had seen too much surgery during the war and wanted to practice a, quote, happier field of medicine. As a result, he became an OBGYN, which he practiced for over 40 years, delivering thousands of babies. I have to read that again. He told me that he had seen so much surgery during the war that he wanted to practice a happier field of medicine. As a result, he became an OBGYN, which he practiced for 40 years, delivering thousands of babies. He passed away in November of 1992. He returned from the war with the following souvenirs, which have remained in our family until we sold them to Legacy Collectibles on the date below, which is just last week or so. First was the P.38 AC-43 serial number. He gives the serial number, taken in France in September 2nd of 1944. Second, he brought back a Luftwaffe sword with blue sheath. For those of you who have never seen this sword before, it's actually one of my favorites. Now, it does have one little distraction where this cord, it's a metal cord that is a metal wire that's wrapped around the hilt, and that came apart and was just wrapped around. I haven't done anything to it. I haven't tried to repair it. Whoever ends up with this, and I would say this assembly won't last very long, probably won't even make it to our website just because of the historical significance. But it's just a very cool looking Luftwaffe design. The Germans, you know, sometimes people get really upset. Why do you collect Nazi stuff? You know, this should all be burned, destroyed, etc. It is part of history. And they just had some remarkable, when you look at the uniforms, the daggers, the swords, there's no army that really compares throughout history. And one of the reasons people collect items from the Third Reich is just because of the ceremonial uniforms and swords and things like this. Just incredible. You can see how this is engraved. The swastika has a gold finish to it. Beautiful blue scabbard. Very, very nice condition. This is the blade itself. A little bit dirty, could be cleaned up a bit. And I wanted to show you the maker because there's an irony here based on a video we did earlier. There's the insignia, which is a knight in Solingen, which I showed. It was either a U.S. Army sword or a U.S. Marine Corps sword from the Vietnam era, and it was made by the same factory in Solingen. So we know not only are they still in business making swords, but they're making swords for the U.S. Army. Okay, from the letter, the next thing is the Hitler Youth knife, and we're going to take a look at that. I'm familiar with the Hitler Youth knife. This looks a little bit different, and that's because it had Bakelite grips, and this was somehow repaired. It looks professionally done because when you rub your finger over it, you can't feel the rivets at all. So this looks professionally done, but obviously replaced. It was Bakelite. You can see that this strap, this leather strap, is broken. And this is the early variation because it does have blood and honor. I'm not going to pronounce it. Yeah, let's try it. Blut und Ehre, German for blood and honor. Here it has the RZM maker mark, and then also Solingen, different factory, but in Solingen. So that must be a place where they make a lot of swords and knives. I do see that quite often on German daggers and swords. So again, slightly altered, but a Hitler Youth knife. Next, he mentions a bayonet and actually gives the serial number of the bayonet, which is 3045, and then finally an iron cross in the box. Here's the bayonet. Nothing remarkable, meaning that the finish is almost completely gone, but it goes with a K98. Who knows why he picked this to bring home? Most of the soldiers, unless they were wounded and needed to go home, they stayed after the war was over because transport back to the United States was done on a merit system. And so even though the war was over by May, most of the soldiers stayed through the summer and into the fall. And that's where I think most of these souvenirs were picked up. Now, the exception would be that P.38. Obviously, he decided to carry it. Maybe it had some significance. We don't know. This is the maker and the date 44. I've already mentioned the finish is mostly gone. And it is serial numbered and matching. So you see 3045. The 5 is a little bit crunched. 3045C. And yes, there is a C underneath it. So 3045C. And it is a matching. Most of the bluing is gone. Here's a picture of a better one. When they first came out, they were nicely blued, much like the guns, but that wore off pretty quickly. So this is one where the bluing is gone, but he brought this back. And then finally, as mentioned, a Iron Cross in the box. This is an original box for the Iron Cross. Again, he would not have taken this off of a prisoner because the prisoner would be wearing the Iron Cross and probably threw the box away long ago, which is, again, why I think after the war they, went through shops and there were souvenirs everywhere to be found around Germany. Germany had a struggling economy, and so people made these available to the GIs. Maybe they traded cigarettes or food or money, who knows, but new in the box. I'm sure he picked this up sometime after the war. This is just a really good example. They do fake these, but you know for sure this is all original with the original box. I don't see any markings on the back. I do want to point out on the real ones, the pins just seem really awkward and because they're so big. They're not like the typical pin. There's not like a sharp point, but they're pretty large, more like a dagger than a pin, small dagger. But I'll open this up. Don't want to break it. In fact, I'm not going to go any further because it sticks there. But there is some writing, so that might be worth showing. Not sure of the meaning. I know for a fact somebody will comment because people who collect these kinds of medals, I research and collect guns, but I don't know a lot about it, but it does have a 20. And then there is a rectangle and a marking in that, so that might be the maker mark, and not sure what the significance of 20. I'm sure somebody will comment. So make sure you like and subscribe to our channel, make comments. Respectful comments are always appreciated, and adding color to the story, that's great. If you have other information you want to share. People sometimes skip over the comments, and I often find that the most interesting part is hearing what people have to say. And often people will say, my dad was in that division, or my dad was a doctor, or our family went. I just love hearing from all of you. So as I said, make sure you like and subscribe, but also comment about the videos. Let us know what you think.